I did want to go ahead and riff on the NFL here a little bit because we saw some massive news overnight in the National Football League. As we say on You Better You Bet, the NFL, even though it's out of sight, it's always top of mind because they're always coming up with news all around the corner. And the big news out of the National Football League are the big extensions that we saw with the wide receivers in Cincinnati. Jamar Chase, all-pro wide receiver, an absolute rock star, probably the best wide receiver, in my opinion, in the National Football League. He signs a 4-year, $161 million contract, making him the highest paid non-quarterback in league history. He surpasses Myles Garrett, who just got that title just last week after Max Crosby had that title a couple of weeks ago. We're seeing how these things are unfolding. So Jamar Chase now highest paid non-quarterback. And then T. Higgins signing a $116 million contract to stay with the team as well. So we have Chase and we have Higgins going back to Cincinnati, much richer than they were yesterday before they signed these deals. Now, I think on the surface, a lot of people will tell you that, hey, this is great for the Cincinnati Bengals. This means Cincinnati has done right by their quarterback, Joe Burrow, who, like, as soon as the season ended, Burrow was on this campaign of, we must sign all of our best guys, get it done. Clearly, the Bengals front office is listening to Joe Burrow, and they're getting those things done. However, I will say this, Joe, you guys have no defense. I will say, Joe, this is the exact same team that you had last year, which, when I check notes, last season, the Cincinnati Bengals were on the outside looking in come playoff time. Like, that's the thing that we're all forgetting here in this hoopla over these extensions for Jamar Chase and for T. Higgins, and maybe even for Trey Hendrickson, who the team granted permission to seek a trade a couple of weeks ago, now looking to retain Hendrickson, the guy who led the league in sacks this past season. But, like, all of these things and all these guys being on the team is great, but the problem for 2025, which from a betting standpoint, that's what we care about. Like, we don't care about beyond. Like, yeah, maybe down the line, this is great because they're keeping everybody and maybe the cap goes up and they can get other defensive players. But right now, this offseason, who's the defensive player that they can go get? Like, who can they trade for? Who's out there in free agency still that's an impact player? There's no impact defensive player in free agency, that's for sure. All those guys have kind of been swooped up in the market. So, like, are they going to make a trade for somebody? That doesn't seem like the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals rarely trade with anyone. And in fact, the Bengals had an outrageous asking price for Trey Hendrickson, reportedly. So I don't know what move the Bengals can make now that it looks like they're going to solidify this core of Burrow, Chase, Higgins, and Hendrickson. What else is there on that roster? That's the big problem with me for Cincinnati. And it's why I look at the Bengals and I look at the AFC landscape and I say to myself, I mean, the ceiling is like what? Fifth best team? Maybe the fourth best team on their best day? Because right now you have the Kansas City Chiefs who have won the conference 3 straight years. Like, of course, like the Chiefs are the cream of the cream in the AFC, but Buffalo's better than the Cincinnati Bengals. Baltimore is better than the Cincinnati Bengals. I even think the Los Angeles Chargers are better than the Cincinnati Bengals with what Harbaugh can do going into year 2. Herbert and those guys, I know they had the playoff failure last year. Herbert was atrocious in that playoff game, but I trust in Jim Harbaugh in year 2 to get that team on the right path. So how does Cincinnati get ahead of those teams when defensively you still look around and you wonder, how are they going to get stops? Like what's the path to being able to get off the field? What's the path to being able to win football games without having the offense have to score 35-plus points just to win a football game? I don't see that. And they made the change at defensive coordinator, going from Lou Anarumo to Al Golden as Al Golden comes in from Notre Dame, but that's not nearly enough. This was one of the worst defenses in the NFL that if they improve that defense, similar to what the Eagles did this time last year when the Eagles had a bad defense, they brought in Vic Fangio, they brought in Zach Bond, they brought in a bunch of guys, the corners in the draft to improve the defense. That's what Cincinnati needed to do, and so far all they've done is retain what they had last season. So I don't know why I'm supposed to buy into this team who the betting market thinks is 16-1 to win the Super Bowl. I can't get there on the Cincinnati Bengals. So for me, I'm looking to fade Cincinnati this upcoming season unless they make some sort of drastic change on the defensive side of the football.